Welcome to the By Steve podcast.
What's up, man? This is the By Steve podcast, and we are, as always, unedited and talking freely. This is one of those episodes where I will just be on my own. We do have a couple of interviews coming up over the next couple of months, but this is one of those ones where I'm just going to go free as a bird. As always, I'm open, and I am today in bed in my Dunelm fluffy quilt, ticking the podcast box. And today it is Movember Men's Mental Health Check-in podcast, which is a charity which is very close to my heart. For those of you that have listened to some of the other podcasts that I've been on, or for some of you that know anything about me, the nearest and dearest and some of my closest friends will know that Movember is a charity that I try to support on a yearly basis. If you go to any of my social media channels, the Trained by Steve, the Steve Foster, or the Podcast by Steve, you will see that I have uploaded lots of pictures of my Movember moustache. It is horrendous. We are, let me just double check, we are 19 days in, and I have about as much facial hair on my upper lip as a 13-year-old. So it's not going great, but it never does. But it's not about the hair grown on the face. It's about the message that we send. And I think it's really important just to kind of check in on a couple of aspects of this. Movember is Men's Mental Health Month. And the reason why that's so important to me, because the times when my own personal mental health were at their lowest was one, when I was doing a job that I really didn't enjoy, but also when I was going through a really tough period of my own life of being a testicular cancer sufferer, survivor, and going through the whole process of that in itself. So I always think, last year I did some Instagram posts about my thoughts and feelings around like my own mental health and the things that I've struggled with, which I'm not really going to go into too much right now. I got a couple of things that I wanted to cover and just get out there, which were quite poignant really, or important to me. But I think the reality is, for the majority of the audience that listen to this, it's quite local, so they know where I am. And for those of you that are a little bit further afield that are kind of finding this podcast now, I am more than happy to answer any questions that you have via social media or any other format of kind of like getting in touch via LinkedIn or whatever. But yeah, so if there's anyone out there that is, I suppose, going through some kind of stress and trauma in relation to not just male, but I suppose like as a man, I have been through a cancer situation, I suppose. And I know there's a couple of friends out there that are going through some stuff right now. So it's really important for me to be able to support them, and shout out to both of them who have approached me and wanted to speak to me beforehand about the situations that they're going through. And, you know, for anyone, again, that knows who I am at my peak, I'm like the most supportive person that I can ever be, and at my worst, I am the most supportive person I can ever be. I will take on a lot of people's baggage, stresses, and trauma just to try and help them through, because I think I've been through a relative amount myself. So if anyone out there, if you're going through any kind of cancerous situation that you just feel like you want to talk to someone, Like, I am here for that. And I will happily listen. And if you need to cry, you can cry too, because there's nothing wrong with crying. God knows I have done enough of that over the years. Raised in a house full of women until my mid-teens, before any real male influence came in. So I am in touch with my emotional, teary side. Do not watch Marley and Me with Steve, because he will be teary. But I think the thing that the majority thing that I wanted to catch up on this one was the trials and tribulations of the fact that there's still a lot of people out here who are not prepared to talk or don't feel comfortable talking about their mental health hurdles, their issues, and also just addressing the fact that I was one of these people, my hand is in the air, that, you know, before I really had my own problems, that I fully believe that it was all just a little bit boy who cried wolf. My mental health is bad. I need a day off. And until those things kind of like dropped into my family situation, firstly with my mother, then with my sister, and then with myself for a short period of time, I was like, okay, well, this stuff is real, and there is nothing wrong with making sure that we kind of share that stuff. And I think, like, for ladies, women, girls, it's just a little bit easier when you've got that support mechanism of people who are just a little bit more open and a little bit more free flowing with their communication, where we know this, like, I don't even think we know this, that guys are just guys. Dudes are out here flexing and just being too cool to talk about stuff. And it was interesting today because I put 2 posts up on a couple of my Instagrams about asking my followers, which is not massive amounts, like I'm not that famous yet, to kind of put some stuff out there. And what would you want me to talk about? Like, what would you like me to share? Like, and nobody responded, which probably says more about my social media following and coverage than the people who do follow me. But I think there's an element that people are still just a little bit like, well, you know, he will know that it's me that said it. He will know that I am the vulnerable one. So let's be real. Let's cut to the chase. There's nothing wrong, whatever your demographic, male, female. You know, I know we live in a world now where there's a lot more labels to that, and this is where the uneditedness comes in, because you know, I'm still finding my way through that. But the reality is that everybody should allow themselves to be vulnerable and to share things that they feel that they need to share. And I think the important thing is that in your weakest moments, in the days where you're struggling, it doesn't matter what you're struggling with. Like, it might just be that you're like socially overwhelmed. You've spent a little bit too much time with people and you want to stay at home, and you should be able to say no to people. You should be able to just do as you wish. And I know a lot of people who are scared to say no, whether it's to their friends, whether it's to their families, whether it's to their partners, because they're caught up in the fact that there's an expectation of doing. And in these situations, like, you should be okay with like being like, I'd just like to stay at home today. I would just like to not do that. And that's just like an insight to a tiny thing of just being a bit like socially overwhelmed, or like your social battery's a bit dead. You're a bit worn out from work. But that is just the beginning of kind of managing yourself. Like, there's a million and one things that are like worse that you still need to be able to manage. Ooh, excuse me. Um, and there shouldn't be a point in time where anybody doesn't have somebody that they can open up to and talk to. And it doesn't need to be your best friend. It doesn't need to be your mom or dad. It can be a total stranger. It can be someone random that is just a safe space for you to share things. And I'm a firm believer that, at points in time, like I'm walking back from work and I think about one of my friends, and I think that's the world just telling you to check in on someone. And on those times that I've done that and I've reached out, there's been a reason why, like, I've reached out. And they've been like, oh, I'm so glad that you called. I'm struggling with X. I'm so glad that you text. Like, I'm struggling with Y. And I think the important thing is that you create an environment and a safe space for you and your friends, or for you and your clients, or for you and your people within your circles to be able to talk about and be open enough to take on advice or take on someone else's thoughts and opinions, or for them just to open up and just kind of speak for a period of time, for them to get things off their chest. For those again that have any inkling what my social life is like, it's pretty non-existent for the most part. I have a very small circle of friends. Like, I pick them carefully, and the people that I spend time with are few and far between. But what you do get from that is that I am totally invested in each and every one of those people. But what I do know is that within that circle of people that I have, and let's say that number is 20, which is probably high, I know of 3 people who are currently suffering. I know of at least 2 other people who I've spoken to in the last 6 months who have really had a tough time mentally. And I also came off the phone from somebody this afternoon that is also on the periphery of my friendship circle, that is also just having a really tough time. So if you think for someone like myself who's got a relatively small circle, that the number of people that are struggling with certain things is quite high, I think. It's probably like a quarter. That just goes to show how many people are out here in society that are probably struggling with things. And I think the key thing that we need to take from this is that a flippant "how are you doing" is not sometimes enough, whether it's a friend or a colleague or a family member, to enable them to open up to you. There is a space where we just need to ask better questions, and transfer that into, are you okay today? Is there anything that you would like to talk about? Which seems really formal or a little bit over the top, but you don't know what that could lead to. And just instantaneously just thinking back, there was a situation where at my workplace, I'd taken some time to speak to somebody because they were having a bad day. But off the back of that, a week or so later, they called me because they felt that I was a safe space again to have a conversation about something else. And, it's hard because I am not a counsellor. I am not a trained professional, but I'm very good at listening. And for those people that need it, a pretty good hug at 6'6", and 100 kilos, 205 pounds, whatever. But I think once you create a space for people to be able to open up to you, you have to allow them to talk. And I think what we need to do in this day and age is create a safer space, especially for men. And with Movember in full effect, on all of my social media channels, I'm just Does anybody need anybody to talk to? Are you okay? Do you need a man? Do you need an ear? Do you need someone to listen to? Do you need somebody to talk to? Because what I do know from my own experiences is that when it's dark, not like outside, more metaphorically, in your head, but when it's dark, it's really dark. And when it doesn't seem like there's any way out, the only way looks like it's down. And unless there's somebody shining a light upwards or out, like it can just feel like a really, really horrendous hole to get out of. And I will say this, in the safe space of the internet, which is probably not that safe. And it's not really a space, is it? But is that the amount my life has changed in the last 12 months in relation to work, healthy relationships, friends, that like it's an immeasurable distance to how much everything has changed in a year. A year ago, my business was not great because we were still coming out of COVID. I wasn't busy enough. I wasn't making enough money. I wasn't too sure whether the place that I was working was going to last. I was probably 6 or 7 months out of splitting up with my girlfriend, which I was still struggling with, for the reasons that, that the way that situation ended. I couldn't afford to turn my heating on because I didn't have enough money. I was cold. And I tell you now, like I can be open about this, and this will be the first time that I've ever said this out loud while into a microphone. This time last year, I honestly didn't know which way was up. And there was lots of options for me that were a lot greater at making my life easier than carrying on. And do you know what? Like, it's very memorable because we had a staff party at Halloween, and I got so drunk. So this is coming from a man that doesn't really drink. And I went there with the sole purpose of getting absolutely retardedly shit-faced. That happened. I got taken home by some work colleagues and some clients. And I was sick in my sleep twice. And woke up in the morning. Well, thankful that I'd woken up, to be fair. But it was also a massive turning point for me that, like, you can't treat yourself this way. You actually just need to go and talk to some people, get all this stuff out there, and actually, like, be more productive, because it's easy to wallow. It's easy to just sit in your dead space, like, being sad. And I'm not saying that all the answers to all of your mental health issues are on the other side of, like, doing more, because that's not necessarily the case. But there's definitely a place for some healthy routine, exercise, fresh air, spending time with more positive people, or not more positive people, spending time with people who have your best interests. And I can tell you this, like, again, we'll call it 12 months ago. It's probably closer to 15, but it was what it was last year, and I found some people, some new friends, some new people to hang around with, who saw that I was struggling and were happy to help. And these were relative strangers, but who are now my friends. And with their support and with their ability to help me, I'm now able to help others. But I think what we need to do and continue to do is create a space where your friends, your colleagues, your clients, your family are enabled and feel safe to be able to talk about what's going on. Because how I felt this time last year, I don't want my friends to feel. So I want to create an environment where they can come to me or at least ask me if there's anybody else that they can talk to create a little bit of comfort for them and open up and talk about what's going on in their lives. And that's basically all I wanted to get through today. That you are valued, you are here to be heard, you are in somebody's world, you are the most important person. And it doesn't mean that you have to talk to that person, but you should never be at a point where your struggle seems like the only way out is to not be here. Mental health is a real sickness, it's a real illness, and the end of that process is not something that somebody should ever get to. And I'm not saying that medication is the way forward, but there's medication out there that can help, but there's also better support systems and better lifestyle choices that can help you with that as much as possible before you even get anywhere close to that stuff. And again, I'm just going to reconfirm, I am not a medical professional. I have no qualifications in counseling or psychology or medicine or any mental health stuff. I am purely talking from my own experiences, my own thoughts and feelings, and the way that I think. And this is a bit of a waffle podcast, I know it is, but what I want is if anybody listens to this that I know or that I don't know, and they are just fucking struggling, and they just need to talk to someone, holler at me, because I will listen to you. And I will try and help. I really will. And if I can't, I know a few people who can. And we've also got places like Samaritans and all of these companies that you can just Google to listen to, or for someone to listen to you talk about your problems. And they will help you as best they can. So, 22.5-minute podcast. Little short-ish punchy one, just hitting home really. This is a big topic and it should not just be in November. This should be an all year round, and it shouldn't just be a male thing. It's a male-female problem. Mental health is real. Do what you can to keep yourself on track. I am going to sign off. There's going to be another podcast this week with a relatively important, relatively important announcement. But until that point, we will save it. 23 minutes, coasting up to 23.5. I will wish you well for the week ahead. Monday is upon us. Stay strong. Stay sane, and keep it real. Faux show. Show it is.
Welcome to the By Steve podcast.